Hello, everybody. Cheers. Happy Wednesday or whatever day of the week it is when you're watching or listening to this. Welcome to the With Her Two Hands podcast. My name is Bogi, and this is your weekly show where we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go round with her own two hands. As you can tell if you're watching this, I am not in my usual studio. I am in a lovely hotel room in Salt Lake City where I am attending the Women in Auto Care Conference, which is a phenomenal organization. If you're not familiar with it, if you're in the automotive industry in any capacity and you are a woman, you should get involved in it. I will make sure there's a link to that down below. But that is not what we're here for today. We are here to meet an incredible woman who I have had the privilege of knowing now for, maybe 7 years, 8 years, maybe longer. I'm not sure. It's absolutely an honor to get to be able to call her a friend. She's a true OG in the automotive industry. She's been a huge influence in various ways throughout the industry. And she's sassy, she's smart, she's fun. She's got a ton of really cool experience. She's been racing and working on cars for 40 years. She's also a CEO and a race team owner, and she's a coach, and she's like 9 million other things. She's a teacher, she's a doctor, like she's all of the things. So absolutely, I'm so honored to have her on with us. And I know you guys are going to love her, but really quickly, I want to thank all of you for being a part of this journey, this movement that With Her Two Hands is all about, which is really the movement to normalize women in the trades so that it is just a non-issue when we meet women who build, fix, and make things with their own two hands, that it's just normal, no gender qualifier needed. We are just tradespeople. And so you guys are a big part of that. All of your likes, your comments, your shares, all of that helps make the algorithm share this out to more people so that more people can meet these incredible women, hear their stories, and we make it more and more normal every day for women to be kicking butt in the trades as we do. So thank you guys for being part of that. And now, without further ado, I am going to bring on the amazing, the incredible, the one and only Miss Karen Salvaggio. Hello, darling.
With these two hands.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah, it's so good to be with you, Bogi. Thank you for having me today. This is great.
Absolutely. It's always good to hang out and chat with you. Like we go stretches. We'll go stretches like a year even without talking to each other. And then every time I talk to you, Karen, I'm like, I love her. Like I am just reminded of how much fun you are and how spunky and just fiercely independent and just fierce. You are you're a trailblazer, truly.
Oh, you are very, very kind. And honestly, right back at you. I got thinking about when you were doing the intro, I was listening in, and I believe the first time we actually were under a car together working was 2015, probably in Tampa, working on an AMC AMX that was completely torn apart into like, that thing was gutted completely. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that's when I think we first actually, of course, I think we knew each other before that, but that was the first time we actually got to, swap wrenches and doing what you do under the car. And I'll be honest with you, I always have to pour love back into you because, you learn when you're in the industry, who are the real doers, who are the ones that actually wrench and understand, the measurements and understand how things go together. And from the very first time you and I worked together, I was like, she's the real deal. Like she understands, like, because I mean, who knows all the different suspension parts and how to make things go together. And some people can go, get in and take the photo and go, yeah, I'm here with a wrench. And then there's Bogi.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Then back at you for sure. That was definitely the first time we worked together. You're absolutely correct.
Oh my gosh. And then we did the 427 Cobra.
Yes.
On the show. So we dropped a 427 engine and a Superformance Cobra.
Right. I almost forgot about that. Yeah,
that was another laying on the ground.
That was anybody who's a follower of All Girls Garage. Karen was a guest on an episode. This was early on in.
Oh my gosh, that had to be like 2016 or 17, maybe. It's been
Yeah,
a
and I
long time.
don't remember, it was we were putting an engine in, and everybody was freaking out, like, "Oh my god, they're
Remember
not
that?
gonna be able to do it," and the the group of us ladies are like, Quit freaking out, like, this is
Just step
fine.
back.
We got this."
You're right, and that was, haven't we faced that so many times, though, over the years when people are like, "Oh my god," because here we have an engine, hanging on a hoist over top of a very expensive, Super Performance Cobra, and everybody, the crew and everybody are like, "Oh my god, what will happen?" And we're like, "We got this. Like,
Breathe,
it's okay. Just step back. We got
breathe,
this."
everybody breathe.
That was so funny. I mean, you remember that now. I mean, like that was years ago, but
Yep.
but haven't we all faced that over time where people every time you go somewhere you have to almost like reprove yourself that you
Yeah.
actually do have a clue and you understand metrics and SAE and how things work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you've experienced it for longer than I have. You've been in this industry for a long time, and I'm sure you've seen some changes over the years.
Big time.
Before we get too into like diving deep on us philosophizing on the state of the industry, which I'm sure we
Yeah.
could for hours.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share with folks a little bit about kind of let's start with like where you are now. What is your current role, and
Mhm.
what you call yourself and what you're doing currently, and then we'll talk about how the heck you got here.
Yeah. 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 Well, as like for most people, as a matter of fact, I'm not even ashamed to say this. Yesterday, I celebrated my 68th birthday.
Oh,
So
happy
I've been
birthday,
doing this
belated.
since I was like 18. So it's been a long time. And I was a gearhead long before that. We know if you like, I was on Barry McGuire's show with Car Crater, and he's like, I think girls can be gearheads too. And I'm like, yes. And we knew it. We
No.
knew it way
No.
young. Like I would ride my bike, and I was the one that fixed the lawnmowers and did all that. But what I'm doing right now is I retired. Here's the thing: I have a race team. I've had one for a long time, but in my real life, I retired from public education. That's how I actually earned enough money to go racing, because racing is just a giant black hole of money. You just throw the money in and it just never comes back. It's just you pile it in. So I decided a long time ago that I wanted to be able to self fund. So long before that, I had been in the Air Force. So I used the GI Bill to put myself through school. And then I started working in public education, which was a great career. So I spent 25 years, everything from a substitute teacher, and I retired as a superintendent. So since I retired in 2012, I've been doing consulting work because the whole time that I was in public education, I had my other passion, which was cars, racing. So as soon as I was off of work anytime, I was off to the track. So
Yeah.
and then I was able at that point to be able to actually, and I was already a pretty long time member of SEMA by then. And I was able to pour a lot of love into SEMA. So anyway, now I'm on a SEMA council. So one of the select committees, the Emerging Trends and Technology Committee, I'm elected to that. So
Awesome.
I luckily get to work with a bunch of great engineers and amazing people in the industry. And then I do consulting work for an automotive communication company. And then I also work with a company called Scorpion EV, and so I have become like, I'm the internal combustion person who's
Uh-huh.
become an EV person.
I love it.
So
I didn't realize you were working with Scorpion EV. That's awesome. Very
yeah,
cool.
they gave me a title, but it doesn't matter. I do business development with them and
Okay.
just super cutting edge stuff. And I've learned a long time ago, and you know this, just be a lifelong learner. Just never say no to opportunities, and everything about where I've been in my career has actually been because I've been willing to take some, like people go, "Hey, do you want to try this?" And yeah, why not? It's
Yeah.
amazing where you go when you say yes.
Absolutely. I love
Mhm.
your like zest for life and just I can't believe you said 60, what year? 60,
Eight. 8.
Jeez. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a minute. You're not old enough to be 68.
I love you. I love, I'll tell you this, February 20th of 1962, when I turned 6 years old, was when John Glenn went up in his rocket back then. And actually, he was actually the first one to go up, and he didn't make it all the way around. I don't think he was up and down. And Alan Shepard made the first, but I was 6, sitting on the floor in my little party dress on black and white TV, watching John Glenn go up. So
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
born in 56.
Amazing. So you experienced a very different era when it comes to women in non-traditional jobs. How was this for you being a gearhead as a teenager, as a young
Mhm.
adult back when you were? We can all talk about what it's like now, and I can address 20 years ago in the industry, but
Mhm.
you've got some skin in the game at this point. You've really seen some changes. What was it like back then for you?
Yeah, it was, I grew up in a small town north of Pittsburgh. So and we were probably middle class at best. We worked on our own stuff, and we had like one car, and honestly, it was kind of expected that where I grew up anyway, it wasn't weird for girls to work on cars because we were kind of in more of a, I don't want to say ranching because it wasn't that, but in the suburbs, like, or in the rural areas, you kind of did what you had to do. And like, I couldn't afford a car. So I always bought, what the model, the make of POS is, right? Right. So we always only owned a POS. And so if
Right.
you wanted the POS to work, you just figured it out, because I didn't have money to pay
Okay.
anybody to fix anything. So honestly, I never got anything at home anyway. But when I decided I wanted to go to school when I was like 18, I couldn't afford to go to college. So I figured out that if I joined the Air Force, which I did, I got the GI Bill. And when I joined the Air Force, I took the tests and everything, and they're like, hey, you did really well in all these areas, but you're like one of the few people that passed the wrenching part. And they had a
Interesting.
mandate. So this is when Title IX, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and
Mhm.
lots of our viewers out there would know, Title IX was fairly new. And there was a mandate from Congress to get women into non-traditional fields. I passed the test, and they're like, would you consider like being an aircraft mechanic? And I'm like, sure, that sounds like fun. And they're like, well, what about big airplanes? And I'm like, sure. What kind? And they're like, what about B-52s? I was like, sure. So the next thing you know, I'm working on the flight line. The flight line was the first place that I really actually got some pushback, because there was like no
Interesting.
women on the flight line. And they
Right.
were like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And they thoroughly expected me to be an absolute train wreck. And then I wasn't, because I was like, oh, I dig this stuff. So I went through tech school. I actually blew it out of the water, and they're like, we should send you to officer training. I'm like, no, 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 let's not go too far. Let's just give me I want the GI Bill. Remember,
Right.
I'm not making a career out of this. So anyway, but that was actually the first time I really physically had the pushback. Was
Interesting.
you don't belong here.
So how was that for you? I mean, that highlights an interesting thing that I think we still deal with today, where maybe upper management says, you know what, we should be bringing in more diversity, or the mandate, Title IX says you need more diversity, and maybe even upper management is on board with it and agrees with
Yeah,
that. But if the folks that are working out on the job with you don't
yeah,
accept you, then there's still no space for you, right? There's still no room. So what were those early days like before you proved yourself to them, when you first
right. And
show
I will
up
I
and they're
will
like,
tell
who
you,
is this girl?
I think the same thing happens. I watch, because I follow a lot of your posts and a lot of podcasting and things that you do, and obviously the amazing women that you work with through all of your efforts, which, I mean, you're just like amazing. But I watch particularly women that seem to be and I'm making a point here, because this is something I think is so real, and it's not everywhere, but I see people that just leave, particularly like a smaller shop, where they just cannot, they can't soar. They can't put their wings out at all because they constantly, because like what happened to me was I got every crap job there was. Like, and they kept keeping me in the crap jobs. And I mean, honestly, it wasn't until, and I had to risk like everything. I literally, because for me in the Air Force, one of the things as a crew chief is you get to talk to the pilot and you do what's called launching the plane. Well, the guy that I was working under, he was like, "You're not ready." Like you know, and I'm like, finally, I told him, I said, I am never going to be ready until you, like, I snatched the headsets off him. I'm like, I'm doing this. And I mean, honestly, I probably could have got court-martialed or something at that time, but I don't think he knew what to do. Honestly, he was like, holy crap. You know, she just took, because you can't do that when you're getting paid to work for somebody in a small shop. But at some point, you just have to like take charge and say, you know what, this is a place that I cannot thrive and I cannot fix what it is. So then you end up moving or you open your own shop, which is all the better. But what I found, and I think you might agree with this, or you might have seen, no one can argue with competence. No one can argue when you are a badass and you know what you're doing. And it doesn't matter. Like if you're the best painter, the best body prep person, you can straighten anything out on you know, on a Spinazy, you know, giant, and you can work the computer and you can, when you can, so you have to be the best. That's the deal. Like you have to, they can't argue. I mean, they may not want you to learn. You got to keep moving, but you've got it. Like you can't be a poser. You've got to be the best, and nobody can argue when you're just a badass like you are, or like some of the women you work with. They can't argue that.
No, I absolutely agree with you, and I think we say like lead with your talent, lead with your passion, lead with your knowledge, and all of those like are, you're absolutely right. I think the most important thing that I don't want to get lost in your statement there is that if you're in a place where you cannot learn the skills so that you can be the best, is to go somewhere else, because you know the biggest challenge that I think so many women face is this, like, I want to just lead with my passion and my talent, but nobody will give me the chance to, right? Like, just give me the chance to show you that I actually know what I'm doing. And sometimes we have to fight for that, or go someplace where we don't have to fight for it.
100%. And then, I think the other important part of this, and I try to emphasize this, and I guess, after all these years of doing these things, I have to say in a summative way, I've actually had more men help me than have ever tried to stop me. So when you really, like when I was racing stock cars, and I really didn't know that much about building or lapping valves. I just didn't know. I didn't even know what I was talking about. And so I asked one of the guys at track, and he's like, well, he had a machine shop and I needed to do, he's like, well, why not? Because I was asking him about valves and about just stuff. And he's like, well, and he was an old guy. And he was like, why don't you come down and I'll show you how to lap valves? And I'm like, I'm in. So when I was not working at the base, I was down there at the machine shop, and he was showing me how to line bore things and but I had to put myself out there, I had more guys like him that have helped me in my life than I've ever had. Because the guys that just decide they're going to butt heads with you, they don't want you there. You can't fix them. You can't, they're dinosaurs and you can't fix them.
How do you handle them though, especially when you're in an environment where you don't have a way out? You're you're in the Air Force, you're kind of stuck there with them for a little bit. How did you handle the ones that didn't want to tolerate your presence?
Right. Well, number one, don't give them any opportunity. Like you just can't make mistakes. You can't open the door, crack the door, or give them any reason. And you don't really have to engage with them unless they decide they have to engage with you. And then you keep it at a very minimum, like super minimum. Do your job. If it's your direct boss, if it's your absolute direct boss, you might have to just grin and bear it for a bit. But like in the military, you don't have any choice. Like, you can't quit and go somewhere else. Like you just can't. So I was fortunate enough that even though I had a few of those people, I was able to navigate myself around them. Or when a position would open up, I'd say, you know what, I'd apply for that. And because I had the skill, I actually might get it. And there was the very first time I drove a race car was a fellow crew chief of mine on B-52s. He had a stock car that he was racing at Merced Speedway. It was a Saturday and we were working. He's like, can you come down and help me in the pits? Because I don't have anybody to help me tonight. And of course, like I said, my mantra is that I'm in. I'm like, yeah, why not? I don't know what I'm doing. But I knew at some point way back, I wanted to do racing. I was like, this is really cool, Bill. Yes, I'm going. So I go down there. I had no idea. And you know what? He literally, he didn't want to have to do what's called mud laps, which is where you go out and like work the track in. You know, like
Okay.
he's like, that just, I hate that. He's like, you want to take the car? I'm like, yeah. But that all came from the Air Force. And that was a guy who wasn't a pain. He wasn't somebody, because he worked with me and he was like, I know, you know, like if we're going to be installing something, I want her over there, the one, because she's not going to drop it. She's going to line things up. She's going to go slow to go fast, you know, all that. So, but you have to prove yourself. I sometimes you just get stuck, but don't ever let anybody define you. If they're going to define you and you have no way out, you're going to have to find a way out, whatever that is. Like you can't, if the guy owns the company, you ain't going to fix him.
Right.
You're just not.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
You own your own company.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
Bogi did.
Well, let's not make that sound easier than it actually is.
No, it isn't. How many years have you been doing this? How many years have you been in the industry?
I've been in the industry for 25, almost 25 years.
Right. And you've seen the changes too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Right. I think I'm fortunate, like you as well, to have had a lot of good male role models and mentors and influences. But I also had my fair share of like really awful, like really bad pushback and negativity. It surprises me, honestly, that you didn't have more coming up when you did. But I think a lot of that has to do with your attitude. Like if you were this same like personality as you are now, like how could anybody
this
not
has
love
always
you?
been me. And remember, I never worked in a shop. So I've never worked in a shop. I never worked in an automotive industry shop. And all of my experience came from either my aircraft stuff or owning my own race cars, building my own cars, and fielding my own team. So when you're in the driver's seat of that stuff, you get to decide who's on your team. And what's amazing, you're probably familiar with the law of attraction, right? So you get what you give. And I have been very, very, very fortunate to have amazing people come in and help me on my race team. I mean, they just are, I could name them off, and every one of them, I'm just grateful. But they've come in, and then some of them have I've learned from them like incredibly. I mean, it's amazing. But I never worked in a shop. So,
well, I mean, you worked at the Air Force, so you were on the line, right? One way or another.
Right.
Yeah. Which is,
And that was not easy. I don't want to paint it as if it was easy. I mean, I stood out there in the northern tip of Maine, got frostbite on my hands, got left out there in the middle of nowhere in a blizzard for hours at a time. I mean, it was not always pleasant, but I just sucked it up, did what I needed to do, and then kept studying and became as good of a possible mechanic I could ever be. I was on time all the time. I gave them no reason to ever get down on me about anything. I mean, they couldn't. They're like, you're on time, you're a leader, you know, your uniform always looks right. I mean, you don't give people any reason.
Right.
Because
I've got to ask. There's a comment from the incredible Diane Levine. She's saying, I love your confidence, Karen Salvaggio. You are such an inspiration. I definitely agree, but that makes me want to ask the question. Have you always had this confidence? Like, did you just come out this way, or where did this come from? Where did you learn these skills?
You're going to dig deep, but I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to tell the story, and it is not a pleasant story at all. But the truth of the matter is, I grew up with a very, very unpleasant dad. He was not a kind person, and he would not be nice to us all the time. And I finally, when I got to be about 10, and I had a little brother, you know, and I'm like, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I literally, and I'm like, I told him, I'm like, no more, like no more. And that's, I think, I think it even blew my dad away when I mean, I literally confronted him toe to toe. I'm like, you are not talking to us like that. You are not. I mean, sure, he could have knocked me through the wall,
Yeah.
which he was known to do. He was not a very kind person at all. But I think, which is unfortunate to build that kind of resilience, because you can either crumble or you can say, this is my line in the sand. And I do think that it came from, and it's a terrible way to build that confidence, but you literally say, you know what? No, no. And I think, honestly, I think that probably came from my mom more than anybody, because she would try and navigate it, but she was, a good soul. And, I'm the wife and all this. And I'm like, BS. No.
And it was a different time back then, right? That was more expected of women, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I hate to tell that story because, when we have Father's Day and stuff, and everybody's like, "Yeah, my dad's a great," I'm like, my dad passed away, and I didn't cry one tear. And I'm sorry to say that. It's a horrible thing to say, but I think it
No, it's
really is where my resilience came from.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just imagining little 10-year-old Karen. 100, no, this is not gonna happen
We're not
anymore.
doing this anymore.
Do you think a lot of it came from like protecting your little brother too? Like seeing that
Yep.
like a
And my mom.
stepping in.
My mom,
Mhm.
and and my older brother had already left. He was like 5 years older than me, and he ditched the house. He was like out. He's like, as soon as he was old enough, he was gone. He's like, I'm not putting up with this nonsense. So he was gone, and I'm like, okay, it's just usins here, and one of us had better, like, step up, or and still it wasn't good, but it got
Yeah.
better. It wasn't as bad as it could have been. And it's really sad. I mean, I hate to even tell that story, but that's the truth. Like, you have to take that. To me, that was adversity, but you go, okay, how can I turn that into something where I'm not going to crumble and fall away. It's not going to happen.
I'm so grateful that you are, I mean, you are the person you are today because of all the things that happened in your past, right? Good,
As
bad,
all of we are,
ugly,
right? Every
indifferent.
single, anyone watching this, we're all the summation of our life experiences and what we've been. Now, see, on the other hand, to my dad's credit, which, not credit, but he treated me like, I mean, I was, if we're putting shingles on the roof, I was up there roofing. If there was things to be fixed, I was fixing them. If there was boards to be hauled, if there was trees to axe down and cut, chopping firewood.
Not because he was being the good dad teaching his daughter how to do things, but
No,
because it
it
was
was just
you're going to
you.
work and earn your keep, right?
Right, exactly. You
Yeah.
like, yeah. There was no, oh, I'm a girl. No, no.
So there are pros and cons here, but,
Yeah, it's a dual-edged sword.
right. But with great pressure, I mean, it's that old like it's what
Mhm.
the word I'm looking for, but adage or saying that great pressure creates diamonds, right? And
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep,
you dealt
yep.
with a
Or
ton.
or like they say, from adversity, from, right. Yeah, steel
Yeah.
comes from, yeah, a forging process.
Right, absolutely. And even the worst life situations can turn into beautiful things if you look for that silver lining, and it turns you into who you are. So
Exactly.
I'm grateful for it in that sense. Sorry it had to happen the way that it did, but I'm grateful for who you are, and the world is grateful for you. Um,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I'm like trying to where do we dig in here? So you're in the Air Force. How long were you in the Air Force for?
9 years.
9 years. Okay. So a
9 years.
decent amount of time, and always in aircraft
Yep.
mechanics.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider going into doing aviation or avionics, doing aircraft mechanics once you got out of the Air Force, or was that not an
Yeah,
interest to you at that
actually,
point?
I did for a tiny bit of time, but I knew that that wasn't the life that I wanted to lead, because I knew what the flight line life was like and
Mm,
what it would require. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I
okay.
mean, I don't want to say that, I didn't want to work hard, because I've worked, oh my God, when you're a superintendent of schools, you are 24/7. serving school boards and teachers and principals and public, and it's a demanding job. But
Yeah, it's not like you picked an
I just
easy
knew
path.
that I just didn't want to. I was like, nah. I love the flight line. I love what I learned, but I was like, no. Besides that, I was the remember, I wanted to have a race team. I would have had to, like my potential of earning more money, through the public education world. I mean, honestly, I have to say we all take careers for reasons, and I didn't know until I started substitute teaching that I found that my true passion and my heart is for helping others find and follow their dreams. That is what I get the greatest joy out of anything that I do. I mean, yeah, it's great when you build something and you see it run and all that's fantastic. But like people will call and they'll say, can I get some advice about something? And I'm like, oh, what do you need? I just want to help others. It's just a calling that some of us have. And whether it be through our consulting work or whether it be through actually being an educator or doing what you do, you pour your heart into other people. I mean, that's a passion for you.
Oh, 100%.
It has to be. It's fulfilling, though.
It is. No, yeah, 100%, and you're phenomenal at it. And I love getting to speak with and share the stories of folks like you, particularly because you've got this like, I think a lot of young people particularly can get lost in the what are the next steps? How do I get to where I'm going? Or, is this taking me off track? Is this the right way to go? And
Yep.
and there's, with age, we get to start seeing that like this random job I had over here and this random job over here all
Yep.
prepared me for this thing that I didn't even know was possible or existed. And
Exactly.
you are such a great example of that. Your racing past and your Air Force past and your speaking and teaching and all of that, like everything comes together with what you're doing currently.
Yep, exactly. And again, like we say, everything that's come before us is what you see here today, whether it be you, me, anyone that's watching this, we're a product of all of our life experiences and good, bad, and ugly, really.
Yeah.
But I think that I would hope that more people through your work or the work of, that we all do collectively, take charge of their own life and really commit to being the very best. I don't care what it is you're doing. I don't care if you work for a company and, you're building databases or you're in the automotive world, whatever. Just be the best. If you can really commit to being the best, but if you just want to slide by, then you're going to get slid by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I would almost even say like not even just committing to being the best, but committing to giving it your best, giving it your all, because
Yep.
if you're
Mhm.
not number one, it doesn't mean you're failure, right? It just,
Oh no,
but
no.
be willing
Well, let
to
me
give
give you.
it your all.
I'll give you a quick example. Like in my racing world, I've raced big endurance races, the 24, 25-hour stuff, 4 people driving, 25 people on the team. And whether or not, I mean, sure, everybody wants to come in first place, right? But when you can come in, I mean, let's face it, everybody wants to be first. But when you can come back together and say, we left it all on the field, we left it all on the track, we gave it everything we possibly could, and it was the best we could do. I mean, you still have a wonderful feeling. I know no matter where I finish in a race, and of course, we always want to win it. I mean, that's what we're here for. But, the first thing I do is pat the dash of my car and go, I love you. Like you served me well. And there was no more, like we squeezed every last ounce of performance out of what we had in our hands right now. And that's all we can ask of anybody.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So did you fall into teaching? Did I hear that right? That you like started substitute
Yeah.
teaching? Was it just by chance?
Yeah, when I got out of the Air Force, I'm like, okay, now what am I? And here's the reason I got out. The reason I would have stayed for my 20 probably because I was actually having fun. I didn't really want to make it a career, but it was kind of fun, quite frankly. I mean, it's never a dull moment on the flight line, I'll tell you that. Yeah, but in 1980, I went in 76, and in 1985, the Air Force came out with a use it or lose it for the GI Bill. So I had to use it by 1989 or it was going to go away. And at that point I had 9 years in, and so I had this decision. I'm like, look, you went in here to get the GI Bill. They kept sending you to, here you are, flying around and getting to fly in planes and work on running engines at the end of the runway and it's exciting stuff. But I'm like, focus, right? Why did I go in? I'm not going to lose it. So then I just decided get out. But when I got out, I'm like, okay, what does a B-52 mechanic do out there in the real world? And so I was like, and in the little town that I was in, they had an ad paper looking for substitute teachers. And I'm like, oh, and they paid pretty good. I was like, oh, I'll try that. So I literally just walked into a third grade class, had no idea what I was doing, like not a clue. But I'm like, these are amazing little people. I love them, and they're like, oh my God, we're so glad you're here, and they're just these wonderful little people. I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, I can do this. I substituted for a while and then I got a long-term position and I was like, I love these kids. So I ended up doing third grade and I took a job and I ended up I was like, I can see a pathway here. So I was like, well, I got to become something. This is it.
All right. Who knew that it would lead the path to so many amazing things?
Yeah. 25 years later. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have a PhD in education. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. In organizational leadership and education. Yeah. Basically, my forte is in team building, like getting the right people on the bus, building strong organizations, and actually leadership. But leadership, as we both know, is about pouring yourself into others so that they can grow into their own positions. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about us collectively as a unit creating something that we couldn't build ourselves by ourselves.
Yeah. When did you get your doctorate?
2003.
Okay. So a little later in life.
Yeah. Oh, it was long after I got out of the Air Force. Yeah. Yeah. That's I just, got my bachelor's, master's in education, and then I did my doctorate. And yeah, I have an associate in applied technical skills, which is all the, everything has to do with the wrenching.
Right. Yeah. And so then you're doing all of this, you're continuing education, you're working your way up in the ranks in the educational system to where you're superintendent, which is no small feat. Mm-hmm. To go from substitute teaching to that, clearly go in and give it your all and be your best is clearly been always your way of doing things. You never lost sight of the racing though. So what was that looking like at the same time? You're trying to do all of the things at once.
Right, exactly. And the truth of the matter, back to what I said about, people that help you and, there's no way I could have done it. I got married, had my daughter, Tracy. My husband was a gearhead too, and then when I said I wanted to start racing, he's like, yeah, we can do that, and so he was kind of like, so honestly, if I had to do it all by myself and work those, 80-hour weeks and all that stuff, I wouldn't have been able to do it nearly to the degree. So I was lucky to have an amazing husband and partner that was also a gearhead. So I worked on the things when I could, when I wasn't out there, but I literally, and I was doing well. And I told him, I said, and he was he was a longtime Corvette guy. He had been racing forever. I had been racing when I met him. And I'm like, this can work. So I literally just said, why don't you just retire? And you just play with cars and I'll go over here and work. And so we figured it out. And it was a great partnership. I mean, I lost him more than 10 years ago now, but it was an absolute, his name was Andy. He was just an amazing, amazing guy. Lucky me. But all of us lucky if we find a partner that really, it just understands us and believes in us.
100%. And I'm very, very sad for your loss.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah. He was a great guy.
Yeah. So tell me about the racing and how it was going. Like, were you well received when you started getting into racing? I mean, here's this school teacher, you know, coming in, starting
Well,
a race.
in the dirt track world, which I did
Mhm.
for, I don't know, just maybe 4 or 5 years, I did dirt track stuff. That was rough. That was really, and I was still in the Air Force at the time, but that was
Okay.
rough. I mean, that was the same reception I got when I was, entered the flight line. People were like, "Who are you?" And this would have been 1982, three, somewhere in there, and it was like, "You don't belong here." And so but what you learned was you had to be able to take a hit and give it back if you needed to, but only when you needed to. And I always let them hit first. I'm like, okay, if you decide you want to run me into the wall, you're like, okay, I can take it and I'll fix my car and I come back, fix my car and I come back. And there was a couple people that I raced that I told my husband, I was like, my car's not going to look very good when I come in this session. Be prepared because I'm not taking this bullshit anymore. Like, no, you're not. You did not just do that to me and you do it again. And this is what you, it's like, oh, look, your fender just came off. I'm sorry. Not sorry. Because I mean, yeah, I went home wrecked like 3 weeks in a row and I'm like, not doing this anymore. Okay. Because what they're really doing is seeing if you, and then I actually decided that again, be really good, out qualify them. If you're not at the back of the pack, it's really hard for them to hit you when you're in front of them. And, I mean, literally. So you learn the only way I can't get wrecked or most likely not to get wrecked is if I'm in the front. So I better qualify. So then I worked on my own qualifying skill. I'm not tell them, I'm not going to say, oh, you're cheating. You have a better. No, work on yourself. It's the only thing you have control of anyway. So I don't care. I don't care what you got, buddy. I'm going to drive the wheels off of my car and you're going to be behind me to start. That's the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, they were literally trying to run you off, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
bang you
Honestly,
up, get you out
yeah,
of the game.
the dirt track stuff, they would have loved for me not to be there. But honestly, same thing. That's the guy that was running, he was running a really super high-end late model car. He was amazing. And he had the machine shop. And once I kind of like, the other thing, and I would have guys that would come to the track and help me, like people like from the Air Force or friends of friends, and they would start running off at the mouth in the pits about, I'm like, shut up. She's not going to do anything to them. She's going to shut up and drive. You're going to shut up and not, let's not help me get wrecked out there. Okay. Just, how about you zipping it? Because look, why don't we all just drive and see where we end up? But you have to become, again, be the best.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think that's a valuable point too, is like not antagonizing it either, right? Because there's that inclination to want to fight back a little bit more aggressively, and you approached consistently all of these challenges throughout your career with this attitude of, I'm not going to tolerate it, I'm not going to let you walk all over me, but I'm also not going to instigate it. I'm just going to keep doing my thing and keep getting better.
Focus. That's right. All you can do, like if you're a welder, be the best damn welder in the building. You lay things that look like those dimes and people are like, holy crap, did you see those welds she made? You're best TIG welder ever. You're a fabricator, I mean, and the women we know in our field that have done well are ones, and we can name them. We've worked with them or them well. They are really good at what they do. They're good at what they do. And they don't
because we have to be.
Yeah, you don't lead with a chip on your shoulder. Like you just don't. Like you don't walk in with a chip on your shoulder and say, I'm here to do the job. And you're going to be happy that I'm here because I'm really damn good at what I do.
It's really nice to see, Karen, with you particularly. I feel like, there are some women of your generation that kind of, they lost the joy that like you so clearly have. And like, how do I say this? I feel like, and not just in automotive or the trades, I think in a lot of career paths where women were not accepted, is that they felt like they had to become like men in order to survive. So they started
become almost hardened.
Yeah, they get hardened, they start acting like men. And you never lost this beautiful person that you are, the joyous and the soft and all of it. Like, it's beautiful to see, because I think a lot of people, I struggled with it, and I'm 2 generations, 2 decades after you coming into the industry. And I struggled with that feeling of, I have to act like one of the boys to survive here. And so it's nice to see that after all these years that never happened to you. You never lost you in the mix.
Right. And I thank you for saying that, because we're not one of them. We can be as good as they are. And we have a lot of guy friends, you and I both, and we know how to cut up, and we can sit down and have a beer with them and everything. But you still have to hold yourself at a standard that is such that people hold you with respect. They have to, like, you define your own world of respect in this world. Like you can get in the gutter with them and F this and F this, like just get right down there, and they'll go, yeah, she's one of, that's cool. But it's not necessarily how you get the most respect out of all generations. Like the guys that are with you now, that's one thing. But the people you work for, the clients you're serving, they expect somebody who has some degree of integrity and has earned respect in the world. And you define that for yourself. It's how you behave.
Absolutely. In everything, not just in your job or at the workplace, but everywhere you go and carry yourself. I talk about that all the time with industry folks. Is like, we wonder why our trade isn't respected out in the world. It's like, how we carry ourselves everywhere is so important, because we're impacting people's opinion of, as women, we're impacting people's opinion of women in our trade. And as tradespeople, we're impacting people's opinion of the trade as a whole.
Yep, exactly. And the other thing is, I mean, I shy away from a lot of the things that are like, I don't want to carry the women's banner, if you know what I mean, which I don't want to say I'm not a woman, but there's some people, they just lead with it and they bleed it. And they just, and what it does is it defines them in the bigger picture, and which is fine, because they have a cause and they feel like they have to carry the torch. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that, because especially where they are, it might be what they have to be. But for me, over time, I've actually made a conscious decision to absolutely support things that are helping women rise in the industry, find great careers in the industry and that. But it can't be my only defining factor of my life. Like, people go, oh yeah, she's a what? No, they need to understand. No, I can write a dissertation, I can fix a car, and I can also go cook a great meal. It's like you have to be kind of like, you define yourself, like, yeah. And I can, I would caution everyone to, take a step back and look at how you're presenting yourself in the world. Because if you lead with that edge, remember, law of attraction, you get what you give. So if you walk in there and you're just, like, go ahead, take me on, well, you're going to get people who want to take you on, like, yeah, just, you know what I mean? You've seen it. I've seen it.
Oh yeah. 100. If you come in guns a-blazing, that's the reception
that's
that you're
going to get. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't mean you don't, again, you're not anybody's doormat. You're not there to get stepped on. But first thing is you just go in and prove yourself. And if you're at a place, honestly, I can't say this enough to anyone, if you're in a place where you just can't thrive, you've got to figure out a way to get out.
Yep. I could not agree more. 100%. And screw the societal kind of stigma around changing jobs and moving from place to place. If it's not a good place, it's not a good place. Go
even
somewhere
for
else.
Me, I'll be honest with you, I generally last about 6-7 years somewhere, and I figure I've pretty much, I've learned everything there is to learn there, and I'm like, okay, I figured this place out. And it isn't like I want to exit stage right, but then I'm like, I'm ready. Be ready for a new challenge.
You get bored quick. You get bored. You're like, I mastered this challenge. Next.
Yeah. I love you guys. It's time to go.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
What's the next adventure? Do we have like a new adventure in the works, or are you happy where you're at currently?
Right at the moment, actually, it's really interesting because, in the EV world, because I'm doing the stuff with, Scorpion EV, and that whole world is growing and changing. I'm
Yeah.
working with a lot of engineers through the Society of Automotive Engineering. And so, I mean, or Society of Automotive Engineers, I should say. So, what's next? I don't know. My grandson, who's just going to be 16 next month, he already has his provisional race license. And I think
Cool.
that once you get older, you stop thinking necessarily about what I want to do for myself. You become more about either building a legacy or thinking about paying it forward. And so I'm pouring a lot of love into him and his racing, and he's in swim now. So I'm very invested and my granddaughter is just an amazing, she's in floral, they're both in high school. So I'm super into we're super big family people. So, I'm very invested with my grandchildren and watching him grow, and, still doing track events, and I race here and there. So just kind of enjoying life right at the moment.
I love it. Good for, as you should. You well earned, well deserved. So I'm curious. I mean, you've had a range of experiences, right? In different areas of the industry, and different generations and different types of folks.
Mhm.
Have you do you feel like things are getting better? Do you feel like things are changing? Or is it really more about the individuals, where you're at, and who you are and who you bring to the table?
Yeah, I think as far as our industry goes, I think there's a huge change that's going on there with the openness to not just women, but to just about people who have divergent ideas, people who bring different ideas and different beliefs to the table. The creativity that I think that's happening in the industry right now. We're in a huge morphical time where we're really changing over. EV is not. I can tell you this. There's this whole. EV is going to take over the world. No, I don't think so. There's not a charging network out there. They don't
Not
run.
yet.
Range. The whole range thing is mostly BS. It's like, oh yeah, it'll go 400 miles. I'm like, yeah, not when it's cold.
So you haven't been converted working for this EV company yet, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess what I am is a realist about it, and I don't
Sure.
buy into the total, and I still think hydrogen is coming, synthetic fuels, I mean, Ian Lane and what's going on with Boustain and the whole industry looking at alternative ways of maybe converting internal combustion engines to burn something other than total fossil fuels, something that's
Right.
maybe a blend or something that's, because how are we going to, I don't think any of us want to have a horrible planet or any of this stuff, but on the other hand, it's unrealistic to think by 2035 it's all going to be different. No, there's still going to be a lot of ice engines around. So how do we stair step it? So I think it's a super exciting time, to
Yeah.
be in the industry. There's a lot of change. I think those who are willing to learn and grow will always have a place in this industry. Yeah, just don't get too planted in something and be afraid to change.
Yeah, amen. I mean, there were folks who believed that fuel injection was the end of the technician's career, that we were killing cars and it was never going to be the same again.
It's like,
And
yeah, it's over.
exactly your point. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to grow, there's always a place for you, no matter what happens to the industry. But you have to be willing to
Absolutely.
learn.
And then surround yourself like you talk about this all the time. I admire you for this. It's find your tribe, find your tribe, thrive and grow with them. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the only way to really do it. And if they're not in your, you have to be willing to and release some people, you know, and never argue for your limitations, like, oh well, I would have done this because no, guess what? You suck. I would have done this, but I couldn't get myself out of bed today. Well, guess what? The world's not coming and knocking on your door. So you just have to lead with intention and don't make excuses for yourself and find your tribe.
Okay, but you have bad days too, like the rest of us, right? Like,
Absolutely. Oh
So
yeah. I run into total jerks sometimes. People, you're like, oh my God, and you just, and I like the veins will start popping out of my neck. And I'm like, oh my God. I always do this. This is the T-Rex thing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm with the T-Rex. This person is, they're dinosaurs. They don't even get it. So I'll just like, if I'm on the phone with them, I'll just start doing that. It calms me down.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so you answered without me asking what the coping mechanism is, and I think that's perfect. Like you made it
I just
laughable,
in my
right?
head, I just think, you know what? This is an unwise, unforward thinking. I can't fix him. I can't
Right.
fix her. Whoever it is. I mean, I can't fix them.
I love
Bless
that
and
you
release.
imagine a little T-Rex. It's
Here's
amazing. You're
here's what those
fantastic.
here. Hey, girlfriend. Here's what these two. Bless and release. That's what the hands are for. We're releasing those who are total buzzkills to us.
Amen to that.
Let
I
them
love it.
go.
Just let it go. No, that's
Listen,
wonderful. And
I just love. I love you.
I love you. I adore you. I love that you've made it like that. Your way of coping with the bad is by making something that you can laugh at and find the joy in and keep so that they don't win, right? I like
Right.
we can't let the negative Nellies win
Right.
by us
But
becoming Nellies.
I'm going to go back to your point. I have very bad days sometimes. Sometimes, in my life, I've had times when I didn't have enough money to do anything. I lived in a single wide. I've had cars that were total POSs. I have had guys be jerks, all of that. This has not been a, smooth ride at all. But you just have to, you know, we get one shot at this life is the way I think. And I'm like, I want to be around as long as I can. And I'm going to do as much good in the world as I can. And I'm going to do the things that'll help me get to where I want to go. But you gotta kind of figure out where you want to go. A lot of people like to say, if you don't know where you're going, you're always lost. Right?
Yeah. So when you have the hard days, when you have the bad times, how do you get yourself plugged back into all of the rest of this amazing energy that you have and get back on the rails, get back on track?
You know what I do? I get productive. I really get productive. I just go, okay, like I can't fix whatever that was, whatever that is, but I go back to work. Like I go to work, go do something that's productive, do something that you can do, something you can control. And yeah, some of it's bad stuff, even like, trust me, I've been let go from jobs before. Like people are like, you're not a good fit here. And I know, I know I'm not a good fit here. Thank you for helping me make that decision. But then when you're like, holy crap, now what do I do? Go to work. But if you have skills, like you got to know what, you got to be able to fall back on something. That's what you do before the bad stuff happens. Work on
Oh,
yourself.
I love it. Well, you already answered the question that I normally ask as my very last question to a degree, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's a different twist on your advice or what you'd say. My final question I always like to ask is if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to little baby Karen, younger you, or just another little girl out there like you now, what are your words of advice to her?
It's always, my mantra, dream big, work hard, follow your heart, and believe in yourself. Like when everyone else doesn't believe in you, just know that if you're the only person that can really believe in you anyway. You're the only person that can do anything for yourself. So just believe in. I would tell little Karen, it's all going to work out. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to hate some of it. You're going to be bitter about some things. You're going to be pissed off sometimes. But guess what? You control your destiny unless you give yourself over to other people who define you and who control your destiny. Like, don't ever give that away. You have agency in your life.
I love
Just
it.
build it. Yep.
You're an incredible woman. I'm so grateful that you said yes and that everybody got a chance to meet you. You're just, you continue to impress me, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life. Thank you.
Wow. Well, right back at you. Believe me, I admire everything you do. And I mean, honestly, there's people in this world that make a difference, which is what we talk about when we're teachers. It's like, make a difference, be a teacher.
Yeah.
You are making a difference in this world. I see it when I see you with all the different women who you've helped along the way, when we're having a good time and cutting up. But it's because we have a base. And I admire I admire the devil out of you, dear. I just think you're
Thank
awesome.
you. I appreciate that. The
I admire
feeling
you
is
to pieces.
100%
Yes.
mutual. Uh,
Yes.
yes. And folks at home, I hope you enjoyed meeting this incredible woman. If you want to follow her contact info, not contact info, her links where you can
Yeah.
find her, that'll all be in the description below. Make sure you go give her a follow, show her some love, see all the amazingness that she is up to.
No.
And thank you guys all for joining in and sharing part of your evening with us. Make sure that you come back next week. We have another incredible tradeswoman for you to meet. And of course, every Monday we release an archive episode. So 2 times a week, you get to meet incredibly inspiring women out there building, making, fixing things with their own 2 hands. Thank you guys so much for joining. Karen, again, thank you for a fantastic evening. Until
My
next time,
pleasure.
guys, thank you. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. We'll see you later. Good night, guys.